Hello, my name is Diane, and today I want to talk about Infinity Gate by M.R. Carey. This book came out last week, and it is the first book in a planned series called The Pandemonium. This is a sci-fi series centering around an alliance called the Pandemonium. They are a political and trade alliance between many worlds. All of these worlds are different versions of Earth, different dimensions where Earth has developed in very different ways. They all work together to share resources and protect one another from anything potentially threatening outside of their alliance. And one of these potentially threatening things they encounter is an AI species, basically sentient robots that they have never seen before, they don't understand, they don't know where they came from, and they're not entirely sure what they're capable of, but they know that this is potentially a very big thing that could be devastating for them. In this book, this particular part of the story, we are following primarily three main characters who all somehow are related to one another and have a hand in awakening the AI that is telling us this story. These main characters are Hades, a scientist who lives outside of the Pandemonium. She accidentally discovers interdimensional travel while trying to figure out a way to save her own world, which is not doing well. It is failing and on the brink of collapse. Essien, who lives on another Earth outside of the Pandemonium, he is a rogue who is doing whatever he needs to get by. He's not very well off. He's not a very moral character, but he winds up getting entangled in the middle of this. And our third character is Topaz, who is of a rabbit species who lives within the Pandemonium, and we don't meet her until the AI threat has become known, this robot species or whatever they may be. And these three characters don't know each other, don't know anything about each other or each other's worlds even, but all of their stories eventually become intertwined. We begin with Hades, and she eventually passes the story on to Essien, and then we meet Topaz later on, and their stories somehow come together, all three of them, by the end of this. I do really like the way that the perspectives were split, where we kind of shift from one character to the next, which feels like it could be kind of starting over, but everything comes together in a way that the plot is continuing through all of these characters. We're kind of seeing how this main part of the story is coming together, and these characters are kind of all just pieces to this puzzle. It also mostly starts out as following one character at a time, but then as we get further into the story and things become much more complicated and much more developed, we start splitting between characters much more frequently. The change of perspective happens a lot more. Rather than just one big chunk of the story belonging to each character, we eventually are bouncing between them all as all of their lives are coming together. I think the world in this is very interesting. It's not just parallel realities where there's like each character exists in each world, but the world is slightly different somehow. These are completely different worlds that are sort of sitting on top of each other the way that they travel interdimensionally. It's not the type of risk of bumping into yourself on the street when you're on another world. They're completely different dominant species, completely different world states, even though for the most part everything is centered around Lagos, Nigeria in Africa. The story opens where we can kind of assume that an AI is the one telling us the story of how that AI was awakened. We know that that's kind of where the story is going, what we're leading up to, how they all had a part in awakening this AI and allowing it to be sentient. And in that beginning, we're kind of learning along with Hades how this world works, what the interdimensional travel is, as she's discovering it on her own. We're kind of learning about it alongside her. Overall, I really enjoyed this. I really liked this. I liked the buildup of the story. I did think it was very engaging for me. I really like these types of sci-fi stories. I thought it was an interesting take on multiple dimensions, how some Earths are aware that there are many other Earths, many other dimensions, and they already know how to travel between them freely, and how some Earths have no idea. Like Hades and Essenes, they have no idea that there are other dimensions when we first meet them. It's not even a thought to them, they're just living in their world, and that is the only world. I like that there were different species. It's kind of a weird addition to the story, but it is very interesting to consider what if a different species was the one that evolved to be the dominant one, to be a different version of humans somewhere else. There is plenty of action and futuristic weapons. And overall, I had a lot of fun reading this. I thought it was a very interesting story, very engaging for me. My only complaint is that the ending, although it did all come together, it is telling the story of how all of these threads come together eventually and how they all relate to the AI somehow. We do get to see everything come together in this group form, but beyond that, it didn't feel super conclusive. I wish there were a little bit more at the ending. It does kind of end on a cliffhanger where everyone comes together and then it's a setup of what's to come. So this is a good first book in establishing this infinitely large world and all of these strange ideas in a way that didn't feel overwhelming, but it definitely left me wanting more. So I will be reading the second book when it comes out. I am excited to see where this story goes. I did have a lot of fun with this. Even though I was left wanting more at the end, I was left wanting it in a good way where I am anticipating the next book whenever that does come out. And I definitely recommend checking this out if you want a big adventurous sci-fi that isn't too dense or too dry. It does start out a little heavier in the science, explaining things as we're figuring out interdimensional travel with one of the main characters. But things kind of pick up and become more action-centered. Lots of more traveling is involved. Lots of threads being picked up and woven together. We do follow a handful of characters, the three main ones, and then a couple of other ones that are closely linked to this journey towards the group coming together. But I had a lot of fun reading this. I really liked this. I think this was a really fun sci-fi. And I'll be looking forward to the next one. Let me know if you've read this or if this sounds interesting to you. Thanks for hanging out with me,